I'm going to talk about the economic motives behind declaring some women to be witches and how that's historically been used by churches to drum up membership because they have the best rock that keeps tigers away. How medieval churches used witch hunts to gain more followers. The Catholic and Protestant churches promoted themselves by persecuting witches, economists argue. The Salem witch trials of the 1690s have an iconic place in American lore. But before the Salem witch hunt, there was the Great Hunt, a larger, more prolonged European phenomenon between 1560 and 1630 that led to 80,000 accusations and 40,000 deaths. Why did it happen? Well, as with the Salem, and remember, there weren't that many people then. There's a lot more people now than there were then. 40,000 was a lot more people compared to the total number of people back then. Why did it happen? Well, as with the Salem witch trials, there are a lot of theories. In the past, scholars have suggested that bad weather, decreased income, weak governance could have contributed to the witch hunt period in Europe. But according to a new theory, these trials were a way for Catholic and Protestant churches to compete with each other for followers. In a forthcoming Economic Journal article, economists Peter Leeson and Jacob Russ lay out their arguments that two churches advertise their finesse at persecuting witches as proof that they were the best church to join if you wanted protection from Satan. Witches, after all, were doing the bidding of Satan, so getting rid of them was a way to protect people from him. Similar to how contemporary Republican and Democrat candidates focus campaign activity in political battlegrounds, historical Catholic and Protestant officials focused witch trial activity in confessional battlegrounds through the Reformation and Counter-Reformation to attract the loyalty of undecided Christians. These battlegrounds were places where Protestantism made inroads, giving Christians a choice about which church they wanted to belong to. To bolster their point, the authors point out that from about 900 to 1400, the church didn't want to acknowledge the existence of witches, and consequently, it didn't try people for witchcraft. In 1258, Pope Alexander IV even prohibited the prosecution of witchcraft. Yet a few centuries later, the church reversed its decision. According to economists, it was because of the Protestant Reformation. Beginning in 1517, by the way, I don't like this caricature of me either. I don't approve of it. Nobody draw me more caricatures. I'm definitely not trying to get more caricatures for a book. Definitely don't do that. Beginning in 1517, the Reformation split the church into two factions, Catholic and Protestant. Suddenly, these two churches had to compete with each other for followers, and they did so by using the attention-grabbing witch trials as perverse advertisements for their brand. Leeson and Russ argue that this helps explain why areas where Protestantism spread saw more witch trials than solidly Catholic regions. Germany, where Protestantism began, accounted for 40% of these prosecutions. Switzerland, France, England, and the Netherlands, all countries where Protestantism spread, accounted for 35%. But only 6% of persecutions took place collectively in Spain, Italy, Portugal, and Ireland, all regions that were more solidly Catholic. The economists argue that witch hunts declined in the late 17th century thanks to the Peace of Westphalia. That 1648 treaty ended two religious wars, including the 30 Years' War, and established a new balance of power in Europe. It also gave Protestantism and Catholicism a religious monopoly on certain regions, eliminating the need to compete for followers by persecuting witches. Still, some witch trials did continue. So do we see why they're going after prominent women? Do we get it? Do we get it yet? Do we get why they hate J.K. Rowling so much? She didn't do anything. Still, some witch trials did continue between 1650 and 1700. Leeson and Russ suggest that this may have been because people had become accustomed to witch trials. I sincerely believe them to be a way of protecting communities from Satan, which seems to be what people think these days, isn't it? Don't they seem to think that we need to persecute the witches, or else the children will be cursed on some psychic level, and will start self-harming? Doesn't it feel a little bit like Salem? Using witch trials to attract followers is only possible when the belief in witches is widespread. In the same vein, people will only continue to demand witch trials if that belief continues. Leeson and Russ write, the scientific revolution may have eventually eroded a popular belief in witchcraft eroding popular demand for witchcraft prosecutions along with it. And you can see why I'm fighting for the rights to be a science educator without being harassed by the modern day witch burners.